Why was everyone suddenly silent when the transport rolled in? Maybe it was the sound of tires crunching across the cracked courtyard concrete, or maybe it was the quiet anticipation that came before disappointment. Bravo Station wasn't a welcoming place. It was a graveyard of reputations, where soldiers came to either prove something or lose themselves trying. The morning sun painted long shadows across the dust-streaked walls, and the air smelled like oil, heat, and caution. Sergeant Mike Reynolds stood near the armory steps, squinting through the glare as the vehicle came to a stop. His squad lounged behind him, half awake, half bored, all carrying that casual arrogance born from surviving too much. "Another fresh face," Corporal Jake Stevens muttered, spitting into the dirt. "Bet this one doesn't last a week." The others chuckled, tired, unkind laughter that carried more habit than humor. The transport door opened. What stepped out wasn't what they expected. A woman, maybe mid-20s, short brown hair tied back, sharp green eyes scanning the horizon like she was reading something invisible. Her uniform was standard issue, her boots too clean, her posture impossibly straight. A single duffel bag over her shoulder, nothing more. Private Tommy Chen elbowed Rodriguez. "Great, we're babysitting now." Rodriguez didn't answer. He just watched as she walked toward them, calm, steady, unbothered by the muttered jokes or the curious stares. She stopped in front of them, looking for Sergeant Reynolds. Her voice was clear, no tremor, no hesitation. Mike stepped forward, arms folded, chin up. "That would be me. You must be our new addition. Name?" "Parker." "Just Parker?" Jake asked, grinning. "No first name, or are you one of those mysterious types?" Her expression didn't change. Her eyes flicked to him, sharp enough to silence a room. "Parker will do fine for now." A pause. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Rodriguez stepped closer, trying to sound casual. "Listen, Parker, this isn't training camp. This is Bravo Station. We see the real thing out here. You sure you're ready for that?" "I think I can manage." It wasn't arrogance. It was conviction, quiet, steady, unnerving. Mike tilted his head, studying her. "What's your background? Where'd you serve before this?" "Various places." That answer hit him wrong. It was too vague, too calm. "Various places," he repeated mockingly. "Let me guess, maybe some desk job behind a wall of air conditioning." The men laughed. Parker didn't. Something in her stillness made the laughter fade quicker than it began. She just looked at him, not challenging, not defiant, just seeing him. And for a brief moment, Mike couldn't tell if she was naive or dangerous. Tommy shook his head. "I bet she's never even seen real combat. This should be entertaining." "Oh, wait until patrol day," Jake added. "She'll be crying for a transfer by sunset." Parker let their words pass like wind. She scanned the perimeter, nodding sentry towers, supply crates, weapon racks. Her eyes moved like a trained analyst's, methodical, detached, calculating. "Where'd you complete your basic training?" Rodriguez tried again. "The usual places." That tone, too neutral, too composed, unsettled Mike. He'd seen cocky recruits before, but this wasn't ego. This was containment. He took a step forward, closing the space between them. "Look, Parker, around here we don't do mystery acts. You're gonna earn your place like everyone else. No shortcuts, no secrets." "I understand completely." "Good, because tomorrow you're joining our patrol. We'll see if you can keep up when the ground starts firing back." "I'm looking forward to it," she said, and for the first time she smiled. It wasn't the smile of someone hopping to impress. It was the quiet kind that says, "I already know how this ends." Mike blinked. Just for a second he saw something behind that calm, experience maybe, or something heavier. He shook it off. "Rodriguez, show her to the barracks." As Parker followed, the others gathered closer. "There's something off about her," Jake whispered. "She's too calm." "Maybe she's just hiding it," Tommy said. "Some people don't like showing weakness." Mike grunted. Or maybe she's one of those overconfident types who think they've got it all figured out. Either way, tomorrow will sort her out. But deep down, even he knew there was something different, something he couldn't yet name. That night Bravo Station slept light. The wind howled through the perimeter fencing, rattling metal sheets and distant equipment crates. Parker lay awake on her bunk, eyes open in the dark. Every creak of the structure told her something: shift rotations, guard packing, generator intervals. She listened, memorizing the rhythm of the outpost. It wasn't the first time she'd done this, learning a place by its sounds. At dawn, she was already up, uniform crisp, boots laced. When Rodriguez came to get her for the patrol briefing, she was waiting by the door. Inside the small ops room, Sergeant Reynolds stood before a wall map: terrain lines, sector grids, potential contact zones. "All right, people," he began. "Route runs through sectors 7 through 12. Intel says possible enemy movement near Sector 9, so we keep eyes sharp." He turned to the squad. "Questions?" Parker studied the map, her brow furrowed slightly. "The approach to Sector 9 seems exposed. Wouldn't it be safer to take the elevated path through Sector 8 first?" Silence. Mike's jaw tightened. "I've been running patrols for 3 years. I think I know what I'm doing." "Of course," Parker replied evenly. "Just an observation." Jake whispered to Tommy, "Here we go, she thinks she's smarter than the sergeant." Within the hour, the squad moved out. The terrain stretched into endless rock and dust, the kind that swallowed sound and heat alike. Parker was assigned to the middle of the formation, the rookie spot. She moved quietly, matching pace with practice precision. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Rodriguez noticed. "She keeps up pretty well." "Don't get too impressed yet," Tommy muttered. "Walking, easy. Let's see how she handles panic." Sector 9 came into view, a low valley framed by jagged ridges. Even the air felt tense there. Mike raised his hand. "Spread formation, stay low." Parker scanned the ridgeline. The terrain was wrong, too still, too quiet. Her eyes narrowed. "They're here." Moments later, Jake froze. "Movement," he whispered. Through binoculars, 6 figures emerged in the distance, moving in calculated patterns. "Contact," Jake radioed. 6 hostiles northeast, 400 meters. Mike crawled up beside him, confirming the sighting. "We wait. No engagement. We'll call for backup." Parker had already shifted position, watching the enemy through her scope. Their formation wasn't random, it was strategic. "They're not patrolling," she murmured. "They're setting up an ambush." "For us?" Jake asked. "No, for someone else." Mike frowned. "I can see what they're doing. That's why we're calling for backup." "If they're setting up an ambush," Parker said, "someone's walking into it." Her tone wasn't emotional, just factual, urgent. Rodriguez checked his display. "Delta squad scheduled through Sector 11 in 30 minutes. Mike cursed under his breath. Damn it. The decision hung heavy. If they waited, Delta squad would die. If they intervened, they might all die trying. "We can radio them," Jake suggested. "No," Parker said. "Look." She pointed at a cluster of enemy equipment. "That's a signal intercept rig. They're monitoring comms. If we transmit, they'll know." Mike clenched his jaw. "Then what do you suggest?" "There's a ridge line east of here. From there, we'd have a clear angle on their position, high ground, partial cover. We could take them before they trigger the ambush." "That's a lot of open ground," Jake said. "There's a depression," Parker replied calmly. "Runs almost all the way to the ridge. They won't see movement if timing's right." Mike hesitated. "Even if we get there, we're outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," Parker said. "Position and timing matter more." That line silenced them. She spoke like someone who had already learned it the hard way. Rodriguez's radio crackled. "Delta squad 10 minutes out." Mike exhaled long and slow. "All right, we move. Parker, you take point. Show us this route." Without a word, she started forward. They followed, low and fast, through the uneven ground. The depression was just as she'd said, narrow, concealed, winding between rocks. Halfway through, she raised a fist. "Stop." Jake slid up beside her. "What is it?" "Guard 2 o'clock." Through his scope, Jake saw the lone sentry, perfectly positioned to see any movement out of place. "I can try, but it's a tough shot." Parker's eyes traced the rocks, the slope, the man's blind spots. "Wait here." Before anyone could respond, she was gone, moving like water, flowing from cover to cover, vanishing in plain sight. Rodriguez whispered, "Where the hell did she go?" Mike watched through binoculars, trying to track her. For seconds at a time, she disappeared completely, then reappeared closer, then gone again. A distant, muffled thud. The guard slumped silent. Moments later, Parker reemerged, signaling clear. Jake exhaled. "How did she?" "Training," Mike muttered, though his voice carried more respect than sarcasm now. They reached the ridge undetected. From this vantage, the enemy's entire ambush formation was visible: command in the center, communication rig on the flank, shooters spread along the kill zone line. Parker pointed. "Take those first. Disrupt command and comms, the rest will scatter." Her tone was pure field command, concise, confident, unquestionable. Mike looked at her, realizing for the first time she wasn't guessing. She was remembering. Delta Squad was minutes away. "On my mark," Mike said. "Targets as assigned." Parker's rifle rested steady. Her breathing slowed, one heartbeat, one thought. "Mark!" The ridge erupted in controlled fire. Parker's shots found their marks with surgical precision. First the commander, then the radio operator, each before they even knew they were under attack. The squad followed, cutting down flanks and suppressing movement. In under 30 seconds, the valley went still. Jake scanned through his scope. "Clear." Mike radioed quickly. "Delta Squad, this is Bravo Patrol. Sector 9 secure. Ambush neutralized." "Copy that," came the reply. "We didn't see a thing. Appreciate the cover." The squad rose from cover, exchanging silent glances, part disbelief, part admiration. Parker reloaded calmly, eyes scanning for movement. Nothing, just wind over silence. They moved down to sweep the site. The enemy was well equipped, not scavengers, not amateurs. Parker found documents, maps, coded transmissions. Mike approached. "Parker, where did you serve before this?" "Various special operations units," she said quietly. "Nothing most people talk about." The words hit like a slow echo. Jake whistled. "Special ops, no wonder." "Why hide it?" Rodriguez asked. "It wasn't relevant," she said. Mike studied her face. She wasn't showing pride, just truth. And suddenly everything made sense. On the way back, the squad walked in a silence that felt heavier, fuller. Respect wasn't spoken. It was earned quietly, completely. As the outpost came into view, the sun dipped low over the horizon, setting the courtyard in gold light, the same place where just a day ago they had mocked her arrival. Mike glanced sideways at her. "I owe you an apology." She looked ahead, eyes distant. "No need, skepticism keeps people alive." "Still," he said softly, "I should have listened." Her faint smile returned, the same quiet one from the start. "You did, when it mattered." And for the first time, Bravo Station didn't feel like the same place anymore. Because somewhere between mockery and realization, respect had replaced arrogance, and none of them quite knew how to say it. But deep down, Mike couldn't shake one thought. Who exactly was she? Because something in the way she moved, fought, and led didn't just say soldier. It said command. And yet she had come here quietly, with a duffel bag, a straight posture, and no name but Parker. The wind picked up again, carrying dust across the courtyard as the squad disappeared inside. Parker paused, looking once more at the empty horizon, calm, unreadable. There was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. Why did she come here? That question lingered in Mike Reynolds' head long after the mission report was filed, and the adrenaline drained from his veins. Bravo Station had seen plenty of soldiers rotate through, eager recruits, burned-out veterans, and the occasional drifter trying to outrun a past they never talked about. But none of them were like Parker. She had arrived without fanfare, fought like she'd been here all along, and now carried herself like nothing unusual had happened. And that was the strangest thing of all. The next few days passed with a quiet shift in the station's rhythm. The usual tension in the air, that unspoken hierarchy of pride and experience, began to soften. Everywhere Parker went, heads turned just slightly longer than before. Jake, who had mocked her the loudest, now stopped mid-sentence when she entered a room. Rodriguez, who prided himself on knowing everyone's story, found himself out of questions. Parker didn't demand respect. She didn't ask for it, she embodied it. She trained in silence, maintained her rifle like a surgeon sharpening a scalpel, and treated every movement like ritual precision. Mike watched her from the command balcony one evening. The yard below glowed under the low amber lights. She was alone, running combat drills, not fast, not flashy, just efficient. Every motion spoke of discipline, every pause of thought. "She doesn't waste a second," Rodriguez said, stepping up beside him. "No," Mike agreed quietly, "she doesn't." "You think she's seen real combat?" Mike exhaled through his nose. "You don't move like that unless you've lived it." Below, Parker reloaded, adjusted her stance, fired again. Controlled bursts, perfect grouping, not training, muscle memory. "She's done this for years," Mike murmured. "Then why here?" Rodriguez asked. "Why Bravo Station? We're a frontier post, not special ops territory." Mike didn't answer because he didn't know. The next morning brought another patrol briefing. The squad gathered around the map, but this time something had changed. When Parker spoke, people listened. "The last attack we intercepted had encrypted maps," she explained, pointing to the terrain grid. "They're not random raids. They're probing patterns, testing defenses." "Testing?" Jake asked. "You mean planning something bigger?" She nodded. "That's my read." Mike studied her. "How big are we talking?" "Big enough that we'll need more than luck next time." No one laughed, not this time. As the briefing ended, Captain Williams, the base commander, called Parker aside. She followed him to his office, a cramped metal room lined with reports and flickering monitors. "I've been hearing your name a lot," he began. "Seems you've made quite an impression." Parker stood at ease. "Just doing my job, sir." "I've read your incident report from Sector 9. Efficient, tactical, clean." He paused, watching her carefully. That's not typical for someone just arriving from various places. Her face gave nothing away. "Do you have prior field command experience?" "I've led teams before," she said, carefully neutral. "I can tell." The captain leaned forward slightly. "And yet your file reads like it was written in fog. No clear history, no confirmed deployments. You know what that usually means." She didn't answer. He smiled faintly. "It means you've seen more than you're supposed to talk about." Still, she said nothing. "Fine," he said, leaning back. "Keep your mysteries. But if I'm right about the enemy planning something big, I'll need every capable soldier on the front line, including you." "Yes, sir." When she left, he watched her go, thoughtful, uncertain whether he'd just spoken to a soldier or to something much larger than the uniform suggested. By the third week, the transformation of Bravo Station was undeniable. Training drills ran smoother, patrols came back cleaner, decision-making grew sharper, more efficient, more precise. And everywhere Parker touched, discipline seemed to follow. But it wasn't command by force, it was command by example. Even Jake, the skeptic, started showing up early to briefings, mimicking her tactical methods without admitting it. One night after lights out, Mike found her sitting alone outside the comms building, cleaning her sidearm under the floodlight glow. He hesitated before approaching, couldn't sleep. "I don't sleep much," she said without looking up. He nodded, sitting beside her on the cold steps. The silence stretched. "You know," he said finally, "I've had soldiers come through this base with fancy resumes, medals, citations. Half of them didn't last a month." She smiled faintly. "That's because medals don't help when everything starts falling apart." He looked at her then, the calm in her expression, the weight behind her eyes. "You've seen things," he said softly. "Everyone here has," she replied. "Not like you." A pause, the sound of desert wind over the walls. Finally she spoke. "You ever make a call that saved lives, but cost something you can't talk about?" Mike thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yeah." "Then you know why I'm here." Before he could ask what she meant, she stood, holstered her weapon, and walked away. And just like that, the conversation was over, but the mystery grew deeper. A week later, Bravo Station received new intel. A series of coded transmissions hinted at a large-scale enemy operation in the region, bigger than anything they'd seen before. Captain Williams gathered all squad leaders in the briefing room. The air was tense, electric. "Satellite intercepts confirm heavy enemy buildup," the captain began. "This isn't a raid, it's coordinated. They're coming for us here, Bravo Station, within 48 hours. A cold silence fell. Jake whispered, 48 hours. Against how many? "Too many," Williams said. "Reinforcements are days away. We hold or we fall." Mike exchanged looks with his team. The weight of that statement settled like iron. Then quietly, from the back of the room, Parker spoke. "The conventional defenses won't hold." Heads turned. "What are you suggesting?" Williams asked. She stepped closer to the map display, tracing lines with her finger. "We can't outgun them, but we can outthink them. They expect standard defenses, fixed turrets, perimeter hold. We give them chaos instead." "Chaos?" Jake muttered. "Controlled chaos," she said. "Ambush patterns, deceptive signaling, misdirection. Let them walk into positions we've already abandoned, then hit them from where they least expect." The room was silent. William studied her. "That's unconventional." "It's effective." He looked around at the other officers. None objected, but uncertainty hung heavy. "Show me," the captain said finally. And she did. Over the next 2 hours, Parker outlined a plan so detailed it left the entire room speechless. Layered defense lines, fallback points, overlapping fields of fire, false sensor echoes to mislead drones, every variable accounted for. It was strategy born of experience, not textbooks. When she finished, the captain folded his arms. "You realize if this fails, Bravo Station falls." "I do. And if it works, then they'll never underestimate us again." He nodded slowly. "You'll coordinate." "Yes, sir." And just like that, the new recruit became the tactical lead of an entire base. The next 36 hours were chaos, the productive kind. Teams worked without rest, moving equipment, reinforcing walls, laying deceptive wiring, and camouflaging key structures. Parker's voice echoed through comm channels with precision, calm, commanding, impossible to ignore. "Sector 3, hold position until signal. Do not engage until you have visual confirmation. Squad Alpha, reposition your heavy gun to grid 2-7. You'll have crossfire advantage from there." Mike found himself listening, obeying, trusting, not because she outranked him, she didn't, not officially, but because she knew. By the time the sun rose again, Bravo Station had been transformed. What looked like an ordinary base was now a labyrinth of traps, blind zones, and tactical illusions. Rodriguez whistled as he checked the outer wall. She turned this place into a damn chessboard. Jake grinned nervously. Yeah, just hope we're the ones playing white. Parker moved among them, quiet but focused, checking every detail, testing communication links, verifying sightlines. Everything ready? Mike asked. Almost, she said, then softer. Once this starts, there's no reset button. Everyone needs to know that. He nodded. They do. As she walked away, Mike turned to Rodriguez. She's not doing this for glory. She's doing this because she's seen what happens when the plan fails. Rodriguez frowned. How can you tell? Because I've seen that look before in mirrors. At dawn, the first warning came. Sensors triggered along the northern ridge. Motion, heat, dust clouds. Contact, came the report. Multiple vehicles, heavy weapons, they're coming. Mike's heart thudded once. Not fear, not excitement, just readiness. Parker's voice came over the radio, calm and deliberate. Phase 1. All units hold fire. Let them enter the grid. From the towers and trenches, soldiers waited, watching as the enemy advanced, hundreds strong, shadows moving through morning glare. Mike could feel the tension ripple through his men, the instinct to shoot, to act. But Parker's words echoed again. Not yet. He could almost hear her breathing, steady, focused. Then her voice, Mark. The world erupted. Turrets hidden under supply crates came alive, tearing through the first wave. Minefields ignited where moments before there had been bare sand. Enemy formations broke, scattering under the shock. Phase 2, reposition, Parker ordered. Do not chase, let them regroup into the secondary zone. Her precision was surgical, her voice absolute. Mike found himself smiling grimly. She's orchestrating the entire battlefield. As the enemy regrouped, thinking they'd found a breach, the second line unleashed perfectly timed flanking fire from concealed angles. For the next 2 hours, Bravo Station became a storm of sound, gunfire, explosion, shouted commands, radio bursts. But through it all, one voice stayed steady, directing, adjusting, anticipating. Parker. When the last shell fell silent, the horizon was littered with retreating figures and smoke. Bravo Station stood intact, minimal damage, minimal casualties. And for the first time since its founding, the base had not just survived a major attack, it had won. Captain Williams' voice crackled over comms. All units stand down. Mission accomplished. Outstanding work. Mike exhaled, leaning against the sandbag wall. She pulled it off. Rodriguez nodded, eyes wide. She didn't just pull it off, she rewrote how we fight. In the distance, Parker stood alone by the command post, headset still in place, expression unreadable. Jake muttered softly, "Who is she?" Mike didn't answer, he already suspected. And he was about to find out. Because Bravo Station's quietest soldier wasn't who she said she was, and the truth would change everything. How do you thank someone who just saved your life, when you realize you never even knew who they were? The smoke still hung over Bravo Station like a heavy blanket. The morning light pushed through it in streaks, catching the twisted metal of destroyed vehicles and scattered equipment. Silence, the kind that follows chaos, settled over everything. Parker stood in the center of it, headset still pressed against her neck, rifle slung low. She didn't look proud, she didn't look relieved. She just looked finished. Mike Reynolds watched her from the wall as medics moved through the yard. His squad was alive, bruised, exhausted, but alive. Rodriguez had a minor shrapnel wound. Jake's right arm was bandaged. Tommy was missing part of his vest but still grinning. They were lucky, and every one of them knew it. Mike climbed down from the barricade, walking toward her through the dust and the aftermath. "You did it," he said quietly. Parker didn't turn around. "We did it." "Don't do that," Mike replied. "That wasn't a team effort. That was your plan, your timing, your command. You ran that battle like you'd done it 100 times before." She finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I've done it enough to know there's no such thing as luck in survival, just preparation and consequence. He studied her for a long moment. "You're not just a soldier, are you?" She didn't answer, and that was answer enough. Captain Williams called everyone to assembly in the courtyard an hour later. His voice was strong, but even he sounded different, more careful, more respectful. "Bravo Station held," he said, his tone carrying the weight of truth. "Against superior numbers, heavier weapons, and near-impossible odds we held. Because every man and woman here fought as one. Because we had leadership that refused to panic and strategy that outsmarted the enemy." He paused, turning toward Parker, and because of one soldier's calm under pressure. Heads turned. The same faces that had once mocked her now looked at her like she was something they couldn't quite define, human, but more. Parker stood still as applause broke out around her. She didn't smile, she didn't step forward, she only nodded once. Mike watched her, realizing something that unsettled him. She wasn't basking in recognition. She looked like someone already thinking about the next move. After the assembly, Captain Williams called her to his office. The corridor outside was quiet. She paused before entering, brushed dust from her sleeve, and stepped inside. The captain stood behind his desk, papers spread across it, a steaming mug untouched beside him. He didn't gesture for her to sit. "Outstanding performance today," he began. "You saved this base and everyone in it." Parker said nothing. "But," he continued, "I think it's time we stop pretending." Her eyes met his, calm, unflinching. "I ran a deeper file check," he said. "Your service record, or rather, your lack of one, raised questions. Questions that led me to clearance I didn't know I still had." He picked up a single sheet of paper and laid it flat on the desk. The top line read, "Classified, Strategic Operations Command, Active Field Personnel. Colonel Sarah Parker," he said slowly. "Tactical Division, former Command Operations Specialist, decorations for field excellence, counterinsurgency, and crisis management." Silence. Parker's face didn't change, no shock, no denial. Just quiet acceptance. "So it's true," the captain said. "You're not a recruit, you're an officer." "I was," she corrected softly. He nodded, packing behind his desk. "Why the cover? Why come here under a false identity?" "Operational protocol," she said. "Command had intelligence about a possible large-scale attack on this base. My assignment was to assess readiness and strengthen defense, without influencing normal behavior through rank." "So you were evaluating me," he said, half amused, half impressed. "I was evaluating the station," she replied. "And you have good soldiers, brave ones, but they were underprepared for a coordinated assault. You saw the difference today." He exhaled, leaning on the desk. "I can't argue with results. Still, you could have told me." "That would have compromised the observation." William smiled faintly. "You sound like command already wrote the report." "Maybe they did." He studied her, this quiet, reserved woman, who had turned an entire outpost from chaos to competence in less than 2 weeks. "You know," he said finally, "in my 30 years here I've met officers with more medals than sense. You're the opposite. You walk in without rank, without ceremony, and in 2 weeks, you do what most couldn't in a year." She said nothing. He folded the file, setting it aside. "You'll be leaving tomorrow, I assume?" "Yes, sir. My assignment here is complete." Williams nodded slowly. "I'll issue the official commendation under your cover name, unless you'd prefer your real title restored." "Parker will do," she said. "It's who they know." When she left the office, Mike was waiting outside. He could read it on her face, the calm finality of someone closing a chapter. "So it's true," he said quietly. "You're an officer." "Was," she corrected again. He chuckled, shaking his head. "Colonel Parker, I should have known. The way you carried yourself, it wasn't rookie confidence. It was restraint." She smiled faintly. "Restraint keeps people alive." Yeah, he said, glancing toward the courtyard, where the squad was still gathering debris. Well, around here, you kept a lot of people alive. She looked out at them, Jake, laughing despite his sling, Rodriguez still limping, Tommy whistling off-key as he pushed wreckage aside. Her gaze softened. They're good men, they'll be better now. Because of you, Mike said. Because of themselves, she countered. All I did was remind them what they already were. He studied her, realizing there was no arrogance in her, only weight. The weight of someone who had seen too many victories that didn't feel like wins. Where will you go next? He asked. Wherever I'm needed, she said. Will we see you again? She paused. If you do, it probably means something gone very wrong. That night the station was alive with quiet celebration, laughter, smoke from a makeshift grill, the rare sound of music echoing through concrete. Soldiers toasted to survival, to luck, to life. But Parker stayed apart, sitting on the watchtower, watching the stars fade into the slow blue of approaching dawn. Mike found her there, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. You planning on staying up all night? He asked, handing her one. Old habit, she said. I've never liked sleeping after a fight. He leaned against the railing. You ever get used to it? She sipped, eyes distant. You never get used to people depending on you. You just learn to carry it better. He nodded slowly. You know, when you first got here, I thought you were trouble. You weren't wrong. He laughed softly. I think I misjudged you. You judged what you saw, she said. That's what soldiers do. The trick is learning when to look again. They stood in silence for a while, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Finally, Mike said, they're going to talk about this, about you, probably build some kind of story around it. She smiled faintly. Let them. Stories remind people that strength isn't always loud. As the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in orange and gold, Parker set her mug down. You've got a good command here, Sergeant. Don't lose that. He turned to her. You're really leaving then? Orders are orders. He hesitated, and if they were? She looked at him, the faintest trace of softness behind the steel in her eyes. Then maybe I'd finally get some sleep. The next morning, word spread fast. Parker was leaving. No official ceremony, no farewell formation, just quiet handshakes, nods, and the unspoken gratitude that soldiers share when words aren't enough. Jake approached her as she packed her duffel. So, Colonel, he began awkwardly. She looked up, eyebrow raised. He scratched the back of his neck. Guess I should apologize for, being an idiot. She smiled genuinely this time. Consider it done. Still can't believe we were giving tactical advice to a colonel, Rodriguez said, appearing behind him. You weren't giving it, she replied. You were testing it, and that's how good teams work. Tommy grinned. Guess we passed, huh? Her expression softened, with distinction. They laughed, awkward, genuine, relieved. When she stepped outside, the transport was already waiting. The same model that had brought her here weeks ago. Same dust, same sun, same courtyard. Only now, everything felt different. Mike stood by the vehicle, arms crossed. I don't suppose there's any chance I can talk you into staying. None, she said with a small smile. He nodded, looking at her for a long time. You know, when you arrived, I thought you were here to learn from us. Turns out, we were the students. Everyone learns from someone, she said. Yeah, but not everyone teaches without speaking. That made her smile again, that quiet, knowing smile that had become her signature. Take care of them, Sergeant, she said. I will. As she turned to leave, he called out, Parker. She paused at the vehicle door. For what it's worth, you made us better. She nodded once, then it was worth it. The engine roared to life, stirring the dust around her boots. As the vehicle pulled away, Mike watched it until it disappeared into the horizon's pale light. Around him, Bravo Station buzzed with movement, men repairing, rebuilding, training harder than ever before. But in that moment, for just a breath of time, it felt like something had been taken with her. Not just skill, not just leadership, but presence, that rare kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't prove. It simply is. And in the quiet left behind, Mike understood something he hadn't before. Sometimes, the strongest leaders are the ones who teach by letting others rise. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. What do you do when the mission ends, but your mind doesn't stop fighting? For most soldiers, leaving the field means rest, relief, recovery. For Parker, it meant only quiet. And quiet was never peace. The transport hummed across miles of scorched terrain, the same endless expanse of rock and sand she'd crossed weeks ago. Dust streaked the windows, sunlight flashing in blinding waves. She sat alone in the back, hands resting on her knees, eyes unfocused. Her gear looked the same as it had when she arrived, clean, precise, regulation perfect. But something had changed, something deep and invisible. Because at Bravo Station, she'd seen something she hadn't expected. Faith. Not the kind written in doctrine, but the kind found in people who still believed in each other even after everything broke. And that, more than the victory, stayed with her. She leaned back, closing her eyes, feeling the vibration of the transport through the steel floor. Every sound, the hum of the engine, the shifting sand under the tires, seemed to fade into a rhythm she'd known too many times before. The rhythm of transition. From war back into waiting. When the transport finally reached command headquarters, the difference was stark. Concrete walls, white corridors, clean air. It smelled like authority and distance. She walked through security without a word. Everyone saluted. No one met her eyes. They knew her name, her reputation, her record, but not her story. Inside the debriefing room, a single light glowed above a long metal table. Two officers waited. One she recognized immediately, General Holt, Tactical Division, Strategic Operations Command, the man who'd signed her original assignment to Bravo Station. "Colonel Parker," he said, rising to greet her. "Welcome back. You made quite the impression out there." "Sir." He gestured to the chair. "Please sit." She did. The other officer, a younger intelligence analyst with sharp eyes and a tone that tried too hard to sound confident, slid a datapad across the table. "Mission report from Bravo Station," he said. "Final outcome, complete success. Minimal casualties, enemy force neutralized." Parker glanced at the summary. "They performed well," she said simply. The analyst smiled thinly. "They performed well because of you." "Because of preparation," she corrected. "Good soldiers adapt when given the chance." General Holt studied her, fingers interlaced. "You don't take credit easily, do you?" "Credit doesn't change results, sir." He nodded slowly. "That's what makes you effective and dangerous." She looked up at him. "Dangerous, sir." He smiled faintly. "To the wrong people, yes. You have a tendency to make entire commands look inadequate." "That's not my intent." "I know, that's what makes it worse." Silence settled again, heavy, calculated. Finally, Holt spoke. "Do you know why I sent you there, Colonel?" "To evaluate readiness." "Partly, but there was another reason." He leaned forward. "Command needed to know if you still had it, the edge, after what happened in the Carson Valley." Her gaze didn't shift, but something behind her eyes did. A small flicker, a ghost. "I see," she said softly. "You saved lives back then," he continued, "but the losses were heavy. You blamed yourself, took a voluntary downgrade to field operations. Some called it exile, I called it recovery." She didn't reply. He studied her face, calm, expressionless. "And now that you've done it again, saved an entire base, I have new orders for you." The datapad slid back across the table. "Operation Sentinel," he said. Remote coordination of multiple outposts. You'll serve as tactical command liaison off-site, advisory capacity only. No field engagement. Parker looked at the file, then back at him. Desk work. Command work, he corrected. You've earned it. I didn't ask for it. Holt sighed. Sarah, listen to me. You've done your share of field time. You're valuable where you can oversee, not bleed. She met his gaze. That's the problem, sir. You can't oversee people you don't understand anymore. The young analyst spoke up, almost defensively. With all due respect, Colonel, you understand more than most. The data from Bravo Station proves your leadership metrics exceed any recorded model. Frankly, the system needs you here, not out there. She rose from her chair, slow and deliberate. The system doesn't need me. People do. General Holt's tone softened. Sarah. But she was already turning toward the door. Send the report. I'll sign it. And then she was gone, silent, precise, leaving the echo of her boots in the sterile hallway. Days passed. She worked out of habit, analyzing patterns, reviewing after-action reports, revising tactical protocols. Every detail was perfect, every document thorough. But every night, the quiet grew heavier. She'd go for long runs across the outer perimeter of the compound, where floodlights ended and the desert began. The stars out there were different, the kind that looked back at you, old and indifferent. She ran until her lungs burned, until her thoughts blurred into breath. But the images still came. The faces from Bravo Station, the radio static, the sound of gunfire turning into silence. And beneath it all, a single voice she couldn't forget. Mike Reynolds. That last thing he'd said before she left. You made us better. It replayed in her head like a quiet confession she didn't deserve. A week later, the door to her quarters opened without a knock. Still avoiding paperwork, I see. Parker looked up. It was General Holt again, holding a folder and an expression that wasn't strictly business. Sir, she said, standing. At ease, he replied. I came in person because I have a proposition, something less bureaucratic. She raised an eyebrow. I thought we'd settled that I'm too valuable for the field. Ordinarily, yes, he said, but this one's different. He handed her the folder. Inside was a single classified dossier, thin, sealed with black tape. Operation Vantage, he said. Reconnaissance and recovery. We lost contact with one of our advanced listening posts on the outer frontier. No distress signal, no comms. You're to assess, extract any remaining intel and report findings. Quietly. She studied the folder. Team. 2 operatives plus local support. You'll command. Authorization. Minimal. Her eyes lifted. You're not logging this mission, are you? He hesitated. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, I trust you more than the system right now. Parker closed the folder. When do we leave? 400. Transport will be waiting. He paused, watching her. Sarah, this isn't just a test. If there's something out there we need to know before it spreads, you'll be alone again. You sure you're ready for that? She nodded. I was never anything else. The next morning, before dawn, the airfield was wrapped in fog. The cargo plane sat at the edge of the runway, engines whispering low. Parker walked across the tarmac with her duffel slung over one shoulder. 2 figures waited near the ramp, her assigned team. The first was Sergeant Lyon Torres, compact build, sharp eyes, the kind of quiet professional you notice only when you need her. The second was Private Ethan Cole, younger, new to frontier work, but with that dangerous combination of fear and eagerness. Colonel, Torres greeted, saluting. Just Parker, she said automatically. Right, Torres nodded. We've read your file. Then you know reading it doesn't help, Parker replied dryly. Cole smiled nervously. Heard about Bravo Station. People still talk about it. They shouldn't, Parker said. They should be training. He swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. As the engines roared louder, she looked out across the runway, the horizon slowly waking with light. A different mission, a different sky, but the same weight. Because no matter where she went, command followed, not as a title but as a shadow. Hours later, the aircraft descended through rough turbulence. Below them, the terrain was jagged and hostile, a canyon carved by time and wind, flanked by rust-colored ridges. The listening post was hidden somewhere inside. Last signal came from grid 1241, Tors reported. No heat signatures detected on satellite after that. Cole frowned. So either they went dark on purpose or they're gone. Parker studied the readout, jaw tightening. Either way, we find out. The plane touched down on a makeshift strip of gravel and sand. The smell of metal and heat hit instantly, the same scent as Bravo Station, but lonelier. They disembarked. The air was still heavy. No birds, no wind, no sound. Parker scanned the ridge through her scope. No movement, no patrol signs. Tors adjusted her rifle. Feels wrong. Everything feels wrong until it's over, Parker said softly. They moved out. The path wound through narrow stone corridors, the kind where sound dies fast. Every crunch of bootstep echoed too loud. Cole whispered, "You think they were attacked?" "Or silenced," Parker replied. "Keep eyes up." An hour in, they found the first sign, a broken sensor tower half buried in sand. Then, deeper in, the remains of a small drone, its frame scorched. Tors crouched beside it. EMP hit. "Maybe," Parker murmured, "or something smarter." The canyon walls began to close in. And somewhere beyond the next bend, a light flickered. Faint blue, artificial. Parker raised her hand. "Hold." They crouched behind a rock outcrop, eyes fixed on the glow ahead. "Motion sensors disabled," Tors noted. "Someone knew how to cut them." Cole swallowed. "That's not enemy tech, is it?" "No," Parker said quietly. "It's ours." The blue light pulsed once more, then died. And in the silence that followed, Parker felt it again, that same cold intuition she'd learned to trust. Something was still here. Watching. Waiting. She exhaled slowly. "Weapons ready, we move on my signal." And as they crept forward into the narrow pass, the memory of Bravo Station, of teamwork, of laughter, of redemption, slipped quietly behind her. Because this time, she wasn't walking into a battle she could plan. This time, she was walking into the unknown. What do you do when silence feels planned? Not the natural kind that follows wind or distance. This was the kind that waited. It was the first thing Parker noticed as she led her small team through the canyon. The sound had discipline. Even the air felt like it was listening. They advanced in low formation, rifles angled, eyes scanning. The canyon's red stone pressed close on both sides, narrow enough that every breath sounded amplified. Cole whispered, "Still no movement." Parker raised a hand, quiet. Her own breathing was measured, heartbeat steady, brain mapping every contour, every shadow. The floor beneath them showed faint drag marks, equipment or bodies. Hard to tell which. Tors crouched, brushing the marks with gloved fingers. Recent, 2, maybe 3 days. Parker nodded, "Keep moving." They rounded a final bend, and the canyon opened into a shallow basin carved by erosion and time. At its center stood what was left of the listening post, a half-buried communications dome, antenna twisted, solar panels cracked and coated in dust. The perimeter fence had been cut, not blasted, cut, precise and deliberate. Cole murmured, "Whatever happened, they knew exactly where to strike." Parker motioned toward the main hatch. "Tors with me, Cole, cover rear." The hatch controls were dead. No power feed, no panel light. Parker pried the manual lever free and eased the door open. A hiss of stale air escaped. Inside, darkness. Tors switched on her flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, landing on overturned chairs, scattered papers, a broken mug floating in pooled water from a burst pipe, and blood dark old but not ancient, staining the floor in irregular arcs. Cole swallowed hard. No bodies. Not yet, Parker said quietly. They stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of metal and mold. Equipment lined the walls, some still humming faintly on emergency cells. Screens blinked weak green lights that shouldn't have been possible if the power grid was down. Torres frowned. Backup cells lasted longer than expected. Parker studied the readings. The data feeds weren't static, they were looping. The same 10-second sequence repeating again and again. Temperature, wind, comms link, then reset. Whoever shut this place down wanted command to think it was still operational, she murmured. Cole whispered, so they faked it. Parker's jaw tightened. Yes, and they were good. They moved deeper, past narrow corridors lined with empty bunks and storage lockers. A few personal effects remained: photos, notebooks, small items of routine life. Everything left too neatly. Torres said softly, no sign of forced evacuation. Because it wasn't forced, Parker said. They left on their own or were ordered to. She stopped at a locked inner door marked Operations Core, authorized personnel only. The keypad had been pried open and rewired, but the lock still held. Cole raised his rifle. Blow it. Parker shook her head. No, not until we know what's behind it. She knelt, pulling a compact decrypt module from her belt pouch, attaching it to the exposed wiring. The small screen flickered, lines of code cascading. Her hands moved fast, steady, experience guiding instinct. Torres watched her work. You've done this before. Once or twice, Parker said dryly. The door clicked. Inside, the operations core was half intact, rows of terminals, wall maps, and a shattered hollow display in the center. But it was what wasn't there that caught her attention. The central data vault was missing. Removed cleanly, no damage to the mounting rack. Torres exhaled. Someone extracted it. Recently, Parker replied. Dust patterns different, less than 48 hours. Cole knelt near a corner console, still blinking faint light. Colonel got something. She joined him. The terminal displayed fragments of transmission logs, timestamps, coordinates, and partial message headers. Most were encrypted, but one stood out, a line of plain text that hadn't been scrubbed. Bravo Station, strategic override initiated. Parker froze. That's impossible. Bravo Station's override codes are internal command only. Torres looked at her. Someone outside the base had them. Or someone inside, Parker said quietly. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The hum of failing circuits filled the air. Cole shifted uneasily. Ma'am, if this data went somewhere. It did, Parker interrupted, tracing the routing path. Encrypted jump relays. Whoever took it knew how to erase trails. She stared at the coordinates scrolling across the final line, a series she recognized immediately. Hold sector. Her breath caught almost imperceptibly. Download everything. We're leaving. Torres hesitated. You think command's compromised? I think someone wanted this place to disappear, Parker said, and they wanted me to find it. Outside, the canyon light had changed. Thin gray clouds diffused the sun into pale haze. It felt colder, though the air hadn't moved. As they made their way back toward the landing site, Parker's mind ran faster than her boots. If the message was genuine, Command had ordered a tactical override on Bravo Station days before the attack. Which meant the ambush might not have been an accident. It might have been arranged to test her. The thought tasted bitter. Cole broke the silence. Colonel. Don't, she said, not yet. But it was too late. The sound came first, low, mechanical, distant. Engines. Torres lifted her binoculars. Vehicle convoy West Ridge, not ours. How many? 3 transports, 1 scout. Cole cursed softly. We're not equipped for that kind of contact. Parker scanned the ridge. The vehicles were unmarked, no insignia, no transponder. Private contractors, maybe, or worse. Cover positions, she ordered. We're not engaging unless they spot us. They slipped behind a cluster of boulders, staying low. The convoy moved slowly along the upper ridge, searching, scanning. The lead vehicle stopped near the outpost entrance. Through her scope, Parker watched figures dismount. Armored, disciplined, not local militia. They moved like professionals. 2 entered the facility. 3 remained outside, establishing perimeter security. Torres whispered, "They're sweeping the site." "They're erasing it," Parker corrected. Cole swallowed hard. "Orders, ma'am." Parker considered the options: fight and expose themselves, or observe and risk losing evidence. Then something caught her eye. One of the operatives inside emerged carrying a hard case, small, metallic, black. The missing data vault. Her pulse slowed, so they came to collect. "Not yet," she said quietly. "Let them move." Minutes passed. The convoy regrouped, vehicles turning back down the ridge, heading east toward open desert. Torres looked to her. "We follow." Parker nodded. "At distance. No contact until we confirm destination." They moved quickly, staying within shadows of the canyon wall, using terrain as cover. The convoy maintained steady pace, unaware or unconcerned that it was being tracked. Hours later, as the sun dipped low, the vehicles reached a plateau overlooking an abandoned fuel depot, long decommissioned, off official maps. Through her scope, Parker saw new antenna arrays, portable command tents, and a small landing pad. Not empty, active. Cole whispered, "That's no mercenary camp." "No," Parker said, "that's command tech." A small aircraft waited on the pad, rotors idling. The operatives loaded the vault aboard. Parker's stomach tightened. "They're extracting to Central HQ." Torres looked at her. "You think Holt?" "I think," Parker said slowly, "the attack on Bravo Station wasn't the mission. I was." The words hung there, heavy, final. Cole stared at her. "You mean they set you up?" She nodded once. "To see what I'd do, how far I'd go, how much I'd still trust the system." Torres exhaled. "And now they know." Parker's expression hardened. "Not yet, not completely." She watched the aircraft lift into the fading light, its outline shrinking until it vanished beyond the horizon. Then she stood, adjusting her gear. "We're moving. I want every frequency scanned. Find me the next relay point. We're not going home yet." Night fell fast. The desert transformed from gold to iron, from visible to invisible. They set up a temporary camp in the shelter of an old rock formation, the kind that caught the wind and sang low tones all night. Cole sat by the small stove, staring at the flicker of flame. "Colonel," he said quietly, "why would command test you like that? You've done everything right." Parker looked out at the stars, so bright, so cold. "Because doing everything right doesn't always make you obedient." Torres smirked softly. "You're saying they fear you." "I'm saying they fear what they can't control." For a while no one spoke. The sound of wind against stone filled the silence. Then Torres said, "What now?" Parker considered the question for a long moment. "Now we find the truth. Then we decide what to do with it." Cole frowned. "You mean disobey orders?" She looked at him, her voice calm but absolute. "I mean remember who we serve. It's not the system. It's the people who can't defend themselves when the system fails." The fire crackled once, sending a small spray of sparks into the night. Later, while the others slept, Parker sat alone, writing in her small field notebook, an old habit she never broke. She didn't write reports anymore. She wrote fragments, truths she didn't trust anyone else to hold. "They think control is strength," she wrote, "but strength is choosing not to be broken when you already are." She paused, listening to the quiet breathing of her team. She'd only met them a day ago, and already she felt the same weight she'd carried at Bravo Station, the unspoken responsibility for lives that didn't belong to her, but somehow always ended up in her hands. Her pen hesitated over the page. Maybe Holt was right. Maybe I am dangerous. She closed the notebook. The horizon was beginning to pale. Another day coming, another choice waiting. And as she rose to check the comms relay, one thought followed her through the early light, soft, steady, certain. If they wanted to test me, they're about to learn what happens when I test back. How far do you chase the truth before it stops being about duty and starts being about need? The desert dawn came thin and cold, a gray ribbon along the horizon. Parker was already moving before the first light touched the rocks. She slept less than an hour. Her mind had worked the whole night, tracing probabilities and faces she could no longer trust. Torres joined her by the comms array, coffee tin in hand. Picked up short-range pings overnight, she said. Encrypted, but they match command modulation. Parker adjusted the receiver, eyes narrowing at the faint signal spikes dancing on the screen. They're bouncing data off civilian relays, trying to disappear in traffic. Cole stirred from his bedroll, meaning whoever took that vault doesn't want us to know where it's going, but they're sloppy. We can follow the shadow. Torres frowned, and when we catch it. Parker looked east, where the faint trail of the convoy's dust had already vanished into heat shimmer. Then we see who's driving. By mid-morning they stripped camp, loaded gear, and set out across the flats in their rover, an aging recon vehicle that rattled like a canteen half full of stones. The sun burned white overhead. The desert stretched endless, featureless, a test of endurance and patience. Torres handled the nav board, Parker the scanner. Cole drove, jaw tight, knuckles pale against the steering yoke. Every so often he glanced at the horizon, as if expecting ghosts to rise out of it. "You ever wonder," he said, "if we're chasing something we're not supposed to find?" Parker's reply came quiet but steady. "That's exactly why we have to." The rover bounced over a ridge and descended into a wide basin littered with the bones of old industry. Collapsed pipelines, rusted storage tanks, the skeletal remains of a mining colony long abandoned. "Signal stronger," Torres said. "Comms relay ahead." They parked behind a toppled tower and moved on foot. The basin air smelled of iron and dust. Every step echoed against hollow metal. At the basin's center stood a communication spire, half buried but humming faintly, alive in defiance of its decay. Parker approached, hand brushing away sand from the access panel. The screen flickered awake, green code cascading. Cole muttered, "Power source shouldn't even exist out here." Parker tapped through diagnostics. "Portable cell. Someone installed it recently." A message prompt blinked on-screen. "Authentication required. Strategic OPS node." Tor's voice dropped. "Command network." Parker entered a string of override commands she wasn't supposed to remember. The screen paused, then yielded. Data flooded in: coordinates, timestamps, flight paths. And there, nested deep in the logs, a transmission tag stamped with familiar authorization. Holt Directive Echo. Her throat tightened. "He knew," she whispered. "Knew what?" Cole asked. "That the outpost was compromised. He sent me anyway." Torres stared at her. "You think he set you up?" "I think he used me to clean up his mess," Parker said, fingers flying across the keys, copying every byte onto her drive. "And now he's erasing the trail before anyone else can see it." A soft electronic beep cut through the air. On the spire's small display, a new line of text appeared. "Remote access DATACTD, trace initiated." Parker's eyes flashed. "We're burned, move." They sprinted for the rover. Behind them, the spire's lights flared red. A faint whine built into a rising scream. The explosion came half a second after they dove behind the vehicle. White heat, sand, shards of metal raining down. Cole coughed through the dust. They rigged it. Standard cleanup protocol, Parker said grimly. Destroy evidence, destroy witnesses. Torres checked the scanner. Multiple signatures inbound, fast movers, drones. Then we don't stay here, Parker snapped. Cole, get us out. The rover roared to life, skidding across the basin as the first drone swept overhead, firing bursts that tore craters in the sand behind them. Parker leaned from the side hatch, rifle braced. She waited 2 breaths, 3, then squeezed the trigger. The drone spiraled down in smoke. Nice shot, Torres shouted. Just keep driving. They raced across open ground, chased by machines that never tired, never missed. Parker counted ammo, counted seconds. Then, just ahead, the land fell away, a narrow canyon slit cutting through the basin floor. Left, she yelled. Cole spun the wheel. The rover plunged into the ravine, bouncing hard as dust avalanched after them. The walls swallowed sound. The drones circled overhead, scanning but losing line of sight. Silence returned, sharp and absolute. For several minutes they drove in darkness until the sensors cleared. Parker finally exhaled. We're clear, for now. Cole wiped sweat from his brow. So that's it, we just run. No, Parker said, staring at the small drive in her hand, the one holding everything she'd pulled from the node. We find proof, then we decide how to use it. By dusk they reached shelter, an old survey station tucked beneath an overhang of rock. Inside, dust and time had turned the place into a tomb of papers and broken screens, but the power cells still hummed faintly. Torres sealed the door. No signal out, we can rest a few hours. Cole collapsed onto a crate, still shaking from adrenaline. I'm starting to think command doesn't rescue its own. Parker gave a dry half-smile. Rescue isn't profitable. Torres shot her a look. That cynicism new or practiced? Earned, Parker replied. She plugged the data drive into the terminal, the screen flickering to life. Files unfolded, video logs, orders, correspondence. She scrolled until she found what she feared, a classified memo from General Holt himself. Subject: Parker deployment. Objective: field test autonomous defense protocols through controlled engagement. Ensure plausible deniability. Observation priority over personnel safety. Torres read over her shoulder, face tightening. They used Bravo Station as a simulation. More like bait, Parker said. They wanted to measure how far I'd go to protect an unprepared unit. Cole's voice shook. So all those lives, Rodriguez, Chen, everyone, they were numbers on a report. Parker's hand clenched. Not to me. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the faint hum of dying electronics filled the air. Finally, Torres said, "What do we do with this?" "We expose it," Parker said. "But not yet, we need to survive first." Cole looked at her. "You're really planning to go against command?" Parker met his eyes. Command went against itself the moment it stopped protecting its people. That night the storm came, desert winds screaming through the ravine, slamming against the station walls. Lightning flickered across the open sky, throwing shadows like ghosts across the floor. Torres took first watch. Cole slept restlessly, murmuring through half-dreams. Parker sat near the window slit, watching the lightning cut lines through the dark. Every flash brought memories. The gunfire at Bravo Station, Mike's voice calling orders beside hers. The moment the shooting stopped, and she realized she'd won at a cost she didn't yet understand. She whispered into the storm, not expecting an answer. "You told me not to carry it all, Mike, but you were wrong. Somebody has to." Outside, thunder rolled back like distant artillery. When her watch ended, she didn't wake Torres. She just sat there until dawn bled slow gold through the storm clouds. Morning brought clarity. Torres brewed bitter coffee from rations. Cole adjusted the rover's filters. Parker spread a map across the table. "The relay logs list a final jump site," she said. Hidden server farm under the northern ridge. If we reach it, we can broadcast everything before they shut it down. Tors studied her, and if they're guarding it. Parker met her eyes. Then we find out what kind of soldiers we really are. Cole swallowed. We could call for help, other units might still be loyal. No transmissions, Parker said. Every channel's monitored, we stay dark. Tors gave a half-smile. You realize this is borderline mutiny. Not mutiny, Parker said quietly. Correction. They broke camp, loading what little they had. As the rover rolled out across the sand, Parker looked back once at the small survey station. It already looked abandoned again, as if their presence had been a dream that left no trace. Hours passed. The land rose gradually, turning from desert to broken highlands. The air thinned, the wind sharpened. Tors scanned ahead with binoculars. There, she said, entrance to the ridge tunnels. Through the scope, Parker saw it, a narrow aperture carved into stone, half hidden by camouflage netting. Faint exhaust haze drifted upward. Power signatures confirm, she said. That's the hub. They parked the rover under cover and approached on foot. The air smelled faintly of ozone, machines breathing underground. A soft electronic hum pulsed through the rock. Parker crouched near the entrance, studying motion sensors. Trip lines disabled from inside, she whispered. Someone's expecting company. Tors gripped her rifle. Ours or theirs? We'll find out. She eased the hatch open. The tunnel beyond glowed dim blue from LED strips embedded in the walls. Warm air moved against her face, ventilation from active systems. The echo of machinery thudded like a slow heartbeat below. They descended in silence. The deeper they went, the more the air smelled of coolant and metal. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber filled with server columns and flickering hollow screens. Rows of terminals lined the perimeter, some manned, others empty. And standing at the central console, calm as if he'd been waiting for her, was General Holt. Sarah, he said, voice echoing softly, I hoped it would be you. Parker froze. Tors' rifle lifted instantly. Cole's breath caught. Holt raised a hand. Please, if I'd wanted you dead, this conversation wouldn't exist. Parker stepped forward slowly. You sent me into a trap. I sent you into truth, he replied. The system is collapsing under its own lies. I needed proof it could still produce someone who acts on conscience. She stared at him. You risked lives for a philosophy. I prevented a greater war, he said. The attack on Bravo Station wasn't an ambush. It was a controlled engagement. We needed data to justify shutting down the outer frontier before more soldiers died for nothing. Tors barked a bitter laugh. You killed to save lives, how noble. Holt's eyes flicked to her, then back to Parker. You understand the math better than most. 1,000 lost to save 10,000. Parker's voice dropped to a whisper. You don't get to decide that. He smiled faintly. And yet here you are deciding to come after me. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The servers hummed, lights pulsing like breathing. Parker took another step. What's on that vault, Holt? Evidence, he said. Of everything, every covert order, every manipulated engagement. If this leaks uncontrolled, it will destroy what's left of the military chain of trust. Maybe it should, she said. And what then? He spread his hands. Anarchy, fragmented factions. You think the world survives without structure. You've seen what chaos looks like, Sarah. She felt the truth of that cut deep, but she didn't back down. Maybe structure built on lies deserves to fall. Holt sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. He tapped a command on the console. Across the chamber, security panels slid open. Armed drones rose from charging racks, lights blinking red. Tors swore under her breath, here we go. Parker leveled her weapon. You don't have to do this. Neither do you, Holt said softly. Walk away and no one will know you were ever here. She looked at him. Old mentor, former ally, the man who had once believed she was the system's finest creation. Then she looked at her team, 2 soldiers who had followed her into hell because she'd given them hope. "Sorry, sir," she said quietly. "I already made my choice." The first drone fired, and the world exploded back into motion. What happens when the person who taught you how to fight becomes the reason you have to? The first blast chewed through the console behind Parker, showering sparks across the floor. She hit the deck, rolling behind a bank of servers, heart pounding but mind razor clear. The hum of machines merged with the shriek of metal as another drone sliced the air above her head. Tor's left flank, coal power conduit. Tor's fired short controlled bursts, each shot echoing like punctuation in a sentence written in panic. One drone fell, spinning into the racks. Its explosion lit the chamber in flashes of blue and red. Cole crawled toward a side panel, yanking a cable loose. "Power," on an auxiliary grid. "If I can overload it, we can blind them." "Do it," Parker shouted. Another round tore through the air, the heat brushing her cheek. The smell of ozone and burnt circuitry filled her lungs. Through the haze, she caught sight of Holt standing calmly at the far end, untouched, bathed in the sterile glow of emergency lights. He wasn't hiding. He was watching, measuring. "Is this your proof?" she called across the chaos. "That will kill on command." Holt's voice came back steady, amplified through the comm system. "Proof that even conscience obeys survival instinct." She ducked as a drone strafed the floor. "You don't understand conscience at all." Tor's rifle clicked empty. She grabbed another mag, eyes flashing. 2 left. "Make them count." Cole yelled, charging sequence 3 seconds. Parker counted silently, 1, 2. The lights blew out. The chamber went black. The drone's sensors faltered, their red eyes flickering. In that heartbeat of darkness, Parker moved. She sprinted low, silent, across the metal grating. The world reduced to breath and instinct. She fired twice, each shot a clean arc of light. 2 drones collapsed, their frames sparking. Tor's followed her lead, sweeping the remaining one. Sparks rained like falling stars. When the noise finally died, all that was left was the throb of failing power cells and the smell of melted plastic. Cole gasped, leaning against a column. "We clear." "For now," Parker said, scanning the shadows. "He's gone." Tor's pointed toward a corridor on the far side of the chamber. "Emergency access." He bolted. Parker reloaded, every motion precise. "Then we finish this." The corridor stretched narrow and cold, lined with pipes that hissed like whispers. Their footsteps echoed soft on metal. Cole's voice was barely a breath. "You really plan to bring him in alive?" Parker didn't answer. Tor's caught the silence. "That's a no." "He deserves to face what he built," Parker said at last. "But if he forces my hand, I'll end it." They reached a blast door half ajar, light spilling through the gap. Parker motioned for cover, then eased it open. Beyond lay the control core, a circular room filled with hollow maps of the entire frontier network. And at its center, Holt. He stood over a terminal, his uniform torn, blood seeping through one sleeve, but his posture still proud. He didn't look surprised. "You were always predictable, Sarah. You run toward fire. Better than hiding behind it." He smiled sadly. "You think exposing me fixes anything? Replace one man, another takes his place. The machine keeps moving." She advanced slowly, weapon steady. "Maybe, but at least the next one will know someone pushed back." He typed a final command, the hollow screens flickering. "I just sent the vault to the main archive. You shoot me now, the truth still dies." "Then stop it." "I can't," he said. "Failsafe. Only one person can override it, the one command stripped from the record years ago." His eyes met hers. "You." She froze. "What are you talking about?" "Operation Carson Valley," he said quietly. "You disobeyed orders, saved a village marked for destruction. Officially, you died that day. I made sure of it so you could work without leash. Now that identity is the key. Use it. For a heartbeat she couldn't breathe. You forged my death. I preserved your freedom, he said, but freedom without direction becomes chaos. Torres stepped forward. Enough riddles, shut it down or I will. Holt looked past her straight at Parker. Decide, save your conscience or save the system. You can't do both. She approached the console. The hollow screen displayed two prompts, override/erase. Cole whispered, Colonel, if you hit erase, everything he did vanishes. Nobody learns the truth. And if I override, she murmured, it all goes public names, missions, lies. It tears everything apart. Holt's voice softened. Be the soldier I trained, not the rebel you've become. Parker looked at him, saw the man who once believed integrity could be engineered. Then she thought of Bravo Station, of laughter after battle, of young soldiers who still believed the uniform meant something. She pressed override. Alarms erupted. Data flooded every screen, spilling across global networks faster than anyone could stop it. Holt stared, disbelief washing over his face. You just destroyed decades of order. No, she said. I just gave it a chance to rebuild honestly. He reached for his sidearm, rage overtaking reason. The gun cleared the holster, too slow. Parker fired once. The sound was small, final. He dropped, eyes still open, confusion fading into nothing. For a moment no one moved. The alarms wailed, a chorus of consequence. Torres finally spoke, it's done. Parker knelt beside Holt's body. Not yet, she whispered. She reached into his jacket, pulling a small drive labeled Echo Backup. Insurance, she said. He never trusted anyone, not even himself. She pocketed it. Let's move before reinforcements arrive. They emerged into daylight through an emergency shaft, the sun blinding after hours underground. Smoke drifted from hidden vents as the ridge behind them shuddered, systems collapsing, self-destruct activating. Cole turned to watch. So that's it, we end the war by burning the evidence. Parker shook her head. We didn't burn it, we lit a signal. They climbed into the rover and drove until the ridge was a line on the horizon. None of them spoke for a long time. The silence felt different now, not waiting, not hostile, just full. Finally Torres said, Command will come after us. They'll be too busy denying the leak, Parker replied. By the time they rebuild, the story will already belong to everyone else. Cole glanced at her, and us. She smiled faintly. We disappear. Heroes make headlines, survivors make change. The desert stretched endless ahead of them, but it no longer looked empty. Somewhere beyond that horizon were soldiers who would wake up tomorrow to orders that finally meant something. That night they camped beneath a broken radio tower. The stars hung low and bright, the kind that made the world feel ancient again. Torres cleaned her rifle in silence. Cole stared at the small fire until it burned down to embers. Parker sat apart, notebook open on her knees. She wrote slowly, the words deliberate. Truth costs what lies cannot afford. And sometimes the price is yourself. She closed the book, setting it beside her pack. For the first time in years she felt no orders pulling at her. Only direction, quiet, self-chosen. Torres joined her, sitting cross-legged. You could disappear easy, change your name again. Parker looked at the horizon's faint glow. Maybe, but I think I've done enough hiding. Cole smiled tiredly. So what now, Colonel? She shook her head. No Colonel, just Sarah. He nodded, understanding. They sat in the soft dark until the fire died, the world shrinking to breath and heartbeat. Wind moved through the tower's metal frame, humming a low note that almost sounded like peace. At dawn, Parker walked a few hundred meters away from camp and pulled a small transmitter from her pocket, the one she'd taken from Holt's coat. She placed it on a rock, pressed record, and spoke in the calm, even tone of a debriefing that would never reach official ears. This is Sarah Parker, former Tactical Command. If you're hearing this, it means truth survived the filters. We were told order keeps the world safe. Maybe it does. But order without honesty is just another form of fear. To every soldier who's ever been told to stay quiet, you don't owe silence to corruption. She paused, letting the wind carry the words. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She switched the device off and set it down, leaving it to broadcast on open frequency until its battery died. Then she turned back toward the horizon where Tors and Cole waited by the rover. The sun climbed higher, washing the world in gold. For the first time, she smiled without weight. When they drove away, the transmitter kept blinking against the rock, its red light steady, stubborn. Somewhere across distant bases and command rooms, Parker's message began to cut through the static. And far off, maybe at Bravo Station, maybe 1,000 miles away, a young soldier paused during morning drills, hearing a voice she didn't recognize but somehow believed in. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. How do you live when the fight you trained for is over, and the truth you uncovered can't be unseen? For Sarah Parker, the days that followed were a kind of silence she'd never known. Not the tense, waiting silence of battle. Not the bureaucratic quiet of command. Something deeper, the kind that asks you what comes next when no one's left to give orders. They hid first, it was necessary. Tors found an abandoned weather station on the edge of the northern salt plains, its roof half-caved but the comm dish intact. They repaired it with scrap wire and patience. At night, the dish blinked softly against the stars like a heartbeat. Cole rigged solar panels. Tors set trip sensors. Parker walked the perimeter every dusk, scanning the horizon that never seemed to end. News spread faster than they'd expected. The leak reached every outpost within a day, transmissions, memos, footage. Then it hit civilian networks. The world finally saw what the Frontier Stability Initiative really was, a series of human experiments dressed as defense strategy. Some called it treason. Some called it truth. Command called it impossible. Within 48 hours, entire sectors went dark not from attack but from hesitation. Soldiers stopped following blind orders. They started asking questions. And questions, Parker knew, were more dangerous than bullets. She watched it unfold through intercepted broadcasts, her face expressionless as reports flickered across the cracked screen. Investigations, resignations, public outrage, the beginning of something that might one day be called justice or chaos. Tors broke the silence first. You realize we just rewired history. Parker's reply was quiet. History always needed new wiring. Cole leaned forward, anxious. They'll trace the leak. It leads back here eventually. Then we'll move before they do. He hesitated, and after that. She looked at him, eyes softer than they'd been in weeks. After that, we start teaching others to question before they follow. He smiled faintly. Sounds like mutiny with homework. Sounds like leadership, Tors said. Parker didn't correct her. Days bled into weeks. The desert changed moods, wind one day, glass still the next. They became ghosts in motion, fixing what broke, rationing, moving when patrol drones passed too near. Sometimes they'd hear distant thunder and wonder if it was weather or artillery. Sometimes they'd find fragments of old-world tech buried under sand and imagine how things used to be simple. But nights were always the same. The stars above, and the hum of that repaired dish whispering bits of intercepted chatter, fragments of a world trying to understand itself again. Once they caught a transmission from Bravo Station. A familiar voice crackled through static. Mike Reynolds. If anyone out there can hear this, we're rebuilding. Morale's low, but we've got supplies. Whoever leaked the truth, thank you. We know what we're fighting for now. Tors looked over at Parker. You going to answer? Parker stared at the console. the soft green light blinking like an invitation. Then she reached out and switched the channel off. "No," she said, "he doesn't need a ghost, he needs a story to believe in." One evening, as the sun dropped molten behind the dunes, Parker walked alone out onto the salt flats. The surface reflected the sky, turning Earth into mirror. Her boots left faint impressions that disappeared with every gust. She thought of Holt, of the way he'd believed manipulation could save lives, of the part of her that had once agreed. "Maybe you weren't wrong," she whispered to the wind, "just too afraid to try another way." The horizon shimmered. For a second she imagined she saw Bravo Station there, the walls, the laughter, the sound of drills at sunrise. Then it was gone and only light remained. She smiled small, private, tired. When she returned to camp, Tors was soldering a new antenna. "We got something," she said without looking up. "A signal from South sectors. They're forming a coalition, officers demanding transparency. They're using your words as code." "My words?" Tors nodded, half grinning. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. It's on every channel." Parker exhaled slowly, almost a laugh. "I didn't mean for that to spread." Cole looked up from his notebook. "You didn't have to. People were waiting for someone to say it first." For the first time, the weight in her chest loosened. Weeks later, when it was finally safe to move, they dismantled the station. Packed what they could carry, burned what they couldn't. The dish fell silent, its last transmission a burst of static that sounded almost like applause. They split paths quietly. Tors went north to join the coalition. Cole headed toward the inland settlements, where communication schools were forming, places teaching recruits to think, not just obey. Parker watched them go, pride and ache tangled together. Cole hugged her awkwardly. "You'll show up again, right?" She smiled, "Only if you stop listening." Tors squeezed her shoulder. "You gave us a compass, the rest we'll figure out." When their figures vanished into heat shimmer, Parker stood alone beside the empty shelter, wind tugging at her jacket. For the first time since Carson Valley, she didn't feel lost. Just unanchored in the best way. She traveled light. No insignia, no ID, just a small pack, a notebook, and the faint scar on her wrist that the world would never read as history. In the town she passed through, rumors preceded her. A woman who'd exposed command, a ghost soldier, a myth with gray eyes and a voice like calm before a storm. She never confirmed it. She just helped where she could, training a village militia, fixing calm towers, teaching discipline without doctrine. People called her instructor, captain, ma'am. She always answered just Sarah. And somewhere deep inside, she carried a quiet peace. Because for once, she wasn't fighting for permission to do what was right, she was simply doing it. Months later, during the wet season, she reached a small coastal outpost, not military, just fishermen and families rebuilding after storms. They offered her shelter, food, stories. She offered silence and work. One night a child pointed at her scars and asked, "Were you a soldier?" Parker hesitated, then smiled gently. "I tried to be." The child nodded, satisfied. "My dad says soldiers make the world safe." She looked out toward the dark horizon, waves crashing against unseen rocks. "Sometimes," she said, "and sometimes they just reminded how to start again." The child didn't understand, but she didn't need to. That evening she sat on the pier, boots hanging above black water. The sea reflected scattered lights from the village, small, human, stubborn against the vast dark. A portable radio beside her crackled. The same voice from Bravo Station broke through the static, older now but steady. "To whoever started all this, if you're listening, thank you. The system's changing. Slow but real. We're not afraid to ask anymore." Parker closed her eyes, listening as wind and waves folded the words into the night. She didn't reply, she just smiled. Years passed quietly after that. The world learned, forgot, learned again, as it always does. Names changed. Governments rebranded. But every generation of recruits still heard the same phrase whispered in basic training, painted on barrack walls, scratched into helmets. Dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. No one knew exactly who said it first. Some said a ghost. Some said a colonel who vanished before her medal ceremony. Most didn't care. They just carried it forward like a flag that didn't need colors. One morning, far from any map, Sarah Parker woke before dawn to the sound of rain against the tin roof of her cabin. The smell of wet earth filled the air. She boiled coffee on a small stove, opened her notebook, and turned to the first page she'd written years ago. The words were faded but clear. Strength isn't loud. It just endures long enough to be mistaken for peace. She added one final line beneath it. And when peace finally comes, it doesn't salute. It simply breathes. Outside, the horizon brightened. The rain slowed to mist. Somewhere far away, she imagined the world she'd helped reshape, imperfect, uncertain, but alive. She closed the notebook, set it beside her coffee, and stepped out onto the porch. The air smelled of renewal. Her reflection rippled in the puddles like a ghost that finally forgave itself. She smiled soft, quiet, complete. And for the first time in a very long time, she whispered to the morning, "Mission accomplished." The wind carried it away, into a world that would never know her name but would always live in her echo. Because sometimes courage doesn't roar. Sometimes leadership doesn't command. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.